Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new NVIDIA daily update video. So today, let's talk about NVIDIA stock. Let's talk about what is happening, what we can expect moving into an absolutely astronomical day tomorrow, of course, being the very much anticipated across the board, just in the market in general, NVIDIA earnings. Gonna be a bit of a nail biter, but I'll give you my thoughts moving forward. And yeah, if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. And of course, if you do enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts on the charts, etc., such as telling people to be cautious up here, well, and again, down here, when I was, screaming the table that this is most likely a pretty good dip buying opportunity. Again, I'm not perfect, but just keep that in mind. Again, I share these kind of thoughts with my members, so definitely check it out. Just $3 a month, mainly on Tesla stocks, sometimes other stocks, or $5 a month gives you access to the second tier, which includes NVIDIA as well if you're interested, and of course, everything in the first tier. But jumping into it, NVIDIA unfortunately closing the day down with yet almost another 3% drop, closing at just shy of $127 per share. So what does this mean moving forward into an astronomical day tomorrow for NVIDIA? Now, I want to make a disclaimer. Obviously, like I said yesterday, and I'll reiterate it once again, technical analysis gets triumphed by earnings. So just keep that in mind. Now, at least short-term technical analysis, longer-term technical analysis is still pretty good. For instance, like the longer-term technical analysis in this case is the fact that we're actually right in the dead smack center almost between this, descending channel double trend lines, right? We're pretty much right more or less in the middle-ish of between them. So, one thing I would be surprised is if we actually break above or below these trend lines post earnings reaction. That would I be surprised about. Now, whether or not it goes up or down, I don't know, right? Who knows, right? Nobody knows. No one knows. But the way I look at it is this, right? The way I look at it is pretty simple, right? So for the most part, this move today, it did bounce at a pretty crucial level. We actually did breach my 128 level, which was a bit of a surprise, but we did end up coming right down to that 618 Fibonacci at 124.71 roughly. Like again, I'm not drawing these two little perfection, but around there, right? Got almost a perfect bounce from there. And, it was actually looking a lot stronger, afternoon. And then we, of course, sold off towards the end of the day. But again, ultimately, it doesn't matter. We have earnings. That's what matters. We are a little bit oversold on the RSI, but to me, RSI being oversold only matters as if we're also pretty much at or near the bottom end of the Bollinger Bands, or the very least at or near my band's regression, at which we are neither. So there is definitely more room to the downside from here if NVIDIA's earnings doesn't go well for whatever, many numerous reasons. But my overall kind of major perspective on NVIDIA is, especially if you go to the weekly, right? Assuming we continue holding this massive rising kind of channel / wedge on the weekly, we could get a dip. We could absolutely get a dip on NVIDIA all the way down here to, 118 or so, right? That is a real possibility. But as long as we hold that rough level, we should, in theory, bounce from there pretty aggressively and potentially even make our way back all the way up to potentially, fresh all-time highs, assuming we respect this kind of rising channel / wedge. Now, if we start losing, 117, 118, okay, this maybe just simply is in the incorrect pattern, or things are about to get really, really ugly. Because you have to remember, NVIDIA on the weekly time frame of the Bollinger Bands, it is getting very tight. It's getting very, very tight. You can see how tight it's getting, right? It's getting contracted very aggressively here, right? So that usually implies that once we pick the direction here, which hopefully we'll know after earnings, that usually means that we most likely will continue in that respective direction and potentially even somewhat aggressively. Now, there is a chance that we end up popping on earnings. We come back up to, let's say, maybe the high 130s or something like that, and we continue this kind of contraction on NVIDIA until we finally, at some point, will eventually pick a direction, right? And the way usually these directions get picked is, at least on the weekly in this case, is if we get this contraction and we start hugging the bottom end or the top end of the Bollinger Band during contraction, there's a good likelihood that that's the direction we're most likely going to continue, probably in a fairly aggressive way. So again, we need to see how earnings plays out. That is going to be the ultimate factor that can determine probably what happens next. But another perspective of looking at this is on the daily chart, which again just still stands by this very simple but effective downward channel that we've been zigzagging in, right? So we could potentially, even on this daily perspective, assuming maybe the weekly wedge is incorrect or whatever, maybe the daily one is the correct one, we could easily technically drop rather all the way down to about 106 in the coming weeks, let's say, for instance, maybe early March or something like that, and get a potential strong bounce from there back up to the upper end of the channel. And the thing with these downward channels is that, yes, it is bearish while within the downward channel, but more often than not, these downward channels or downward wedges, they do ultimately at some point break to the upside, just like an upward channel or wedge breaks to the downside. So the issue here is there's a bit of a contradicting there's some contradiction here, because here we have a downward channel, which, you know, could be like this, for instance, as an example. But if we do that, that technically disqualifies, I should say, this rising wedge on the weekly, because if we break below, then that's a little bit concerning, right? What, you know, then you know, there's a bit of contradiction there. So I'm not honestly sure which one is the correct one just yet. I mean, hopefully earnings will clear things up a little bit, honestly. But again, let's just wait. There's no reason to get too, you know, crazy. I am selling cash ticket puts. I sold one more cash ticket put this morning. Couldn't resist. The premium is way too good. I mean, even for transparency's sake, I'll even tell you what I sold. I sold another one for this Friday, 111 strike cash ticket put, which from here is another haircut for NVIDIA of about 12.5% from here, just from today's close. And you get paid $140 for that just for this week. Not bad, man. It's not too shabby. Like, you know, if NVIDIA ends up actually dropping and cratering down to $111 per share, I'll pick up a bit more shares. No problem, right? That's not a problem to me, because then on the daily time frame, I would assume that, you know, we're getting pretty close to that bottom end of the downward channel. And I don't know, I think that's pretty much it. There's not really much more to say, I think, for NVIDIA, other than tomorrow's a big day, right? Let's see what happens. That should hopefully clear things up, ideally tomorrow, or at the very least, end of the week. In terms of options flow in NVIDIA, obviously a lot of activity today, a lot of calls, a lot of puts. The bulls are still dominating the bears in terms of overall flow throughout the day, but towards the end of the day, excuse me, we did see a decent amount of put flow come in for NVIDIA, so that's a little bit concerning. And then if you go to confirmed options flow, NVIDIA is actually only 10 million confirmed bullish flow, which isn't a whole lot. So yeah, big question mark going to tomorrow. Big question mark. Let's see how it goes. It's kind of in limbo land here, NVIDIA. It's pretty much right in the middle. All right, it's not all the way up here, but it's not all the way down here. It's right in the dead smack center, which makes it that much more nail biting, I guess you can say. So yeah, let's see how it goes. Again, don't want to put in too much, you know, hopium or bearishness or anything like that. I don't want to say too many things here. Just in my opinion, the overall picture is probably the most important thing to look at, which the overall picture, if it's a positive reaction, watch for 140. If it's a negative reaction, first level to watch, in my opinion, is about 115. Worst case scenario is a drop back down to, you know, about 107 or so. Those are the probably main two levels to watch out for, to the upside and to the downside, on a bit of a more zoomed out approach. Otherwise, you know, let's just see what happens. Let's see how Jensen delivers. Let's see how the market reacts, because again, don't forget, just because earnings might be good, it doesn't mean the stock has to react positively to the earnings, right? Very different things. Sometimes stocks can beat earnings, companies can beat earnings, stock still drops, or vice versa. Trying to remember if there's anything else I should say. I think that's pretty much it. The 1 hour little channel that we're in, you know, it's a little bit messy, right? Keep in mind it's a smaller channel, but nonetheless, we're still roughly within this channel. We held that Fibonacci. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Let's just see what happens tomorrow. Let's see how the earnings goes. Watch for those two levels, to the upside and to the downside ultimately. And yeah, thanks for watching. And as usual, I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.